patterns, the style.
It's not just material, it's not just looking pretty.
An outsider would call it African print or wax print. But if you're an insider, it's just clothes.
Take hot wax, applying it to the fabric.
So the dye will only pick those areas.
It's a knowledge passed on from one generation to the other.
Women had significant power because they sold wax print.
How many girls have you trained?
Very, very many. I can't remember.
We have more than 350,000 design color combinations. This design, the name from the market is The Ungrateful Husband. You wear it and then you are telling your husband that he's been ungrateful to you.
The missionaries were selling these prints to African women. The missionaries sent their information to Ebenezer Brown Fleming, a Scottish merchant, sitting behind his desk in Glasgow, who then commissioned cloth in the Netherlands.
The local industries are suffering. The Chinese are free to run roughshod over everybody. They are looking at their profits and that's it.
They copy our designs and they put our labels on it, 100% counterfeit.
So here we go. Text a code to confirm that it's a genuine pack. Product may be fake, do not use.
It is one group of people being able to make up a load of money from other people's labour and ideas.
Identity is so important.
Africans were growing cotton using natural dyes and trading amongst themselves before the European came.
It's ours, we need to understand it and claim it.
It's not about being from Jamaica or being from Africa, it's about being black.
Hi everyone. Thanks for joining this Voices of Fashion talk powered by Centraal Museum Utrecht about the waxprint movie by Aiwan Obinyan. My name is Janice Deul and I'm a fashion activist, a journalist, founder of the platform Diversity Rules, but I'm also one of the curators of this wonderful exhibition, Voices of Fashion. I think it's really important and really great that we can have this conversation on this great movie by Aiwan. Also because I think it reflects all kinds of topics that are really important in nowadays conversations, but also in the exhibition in the Centraal Museum. Because the topics are, it's not only about fashion, it's about culture, it's about history, it's about heritage, it's about identity, it's about colonialism. And these are really important and great topics that we tend to talk about more and more every day. So, as I said before, it was really cool. I think it's really cool that we have the movie in the exhibition, but unfortunately we were not able to show it as a whole. But that changes on Saturday, the 7th of August. Then we will be able to show the movie online, but also in the museum. So I hope you'll be able to attend and to see the whole 1.5 hour movie because it's really, really worth it. I've seen it several times now, and it keeps on being amazing and providing more insights and more information. Well, tonight, also joining us all the way from Bali is director Aiwan Obinyan, as I talked about before. So let's kick it off. Aiwan, join us in the conversation. How are you doing and why are you in Bali?
Hey, I'm very well, thank you. It's good to be here. It's good to see you doing your thing, looking glamorous as always. I am in Bali, just kind of taking a bit of a break. I think it's been a really tough few years for everybody around the world. So it's kind of like part work, part holiday. So yeah, I'm out here enjoying the weather, the food. Yes.
Good for you. And what are you wearing now? Is that a batik also?
Actually, no, I wish it was. I actually forgot to bring any batik to Bali. So this is a close second. It's actually paisley.
Ah, okay, it's also lovely. And I guess you will
you.
You will be bringing some stuff from Bali home then later on.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll be bringing back some bales of batik so I can make something really nice for myself. Absolutely.
Yeah, wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Did I mention that we have met before in real life, so to say, some years ago? That's what we
yes.
And you were previously in Amsterdam to showcase your movie. Can you tell a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so it was with a lady called Sabina Bulk, who's actually in the film.
Yeah.
And she screened the movie. I think it was in Utrecht, actually, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it was in Amsterdam.
Oh, was it Amsterdam? Okay, my mistake.
Yeah, no problem.
So she was she decided to screen the film, and you came to see the film, and we got talking, and the rest is history. It was a really good screening, a bit dramatic towards the end, but it was good.
Yeah. Maybe we can, because it was, I guess, 2 years ago, we can see if things have been changing for over the last few years, so to say.
Yes.
Because the main aim of your film was to research whether or not wax prints is to be considered African or not.
Yeah, that was the central question of the film. Yes, is wax print African?
Yeah, and who inspired you to make this movie?
Well, back in 2016-ish, I was launching the sorry, excuse me. I was launching the second season or second collection of my clothing line, Honor Men. And I wanted to make a short video to show my customers where wax print comes from. I wanted to tell them a little bit about the history, and that was it. And in my mind, it was African, because that's what I knew, is that it's just African fabric. So in a way, I kind of set out thinking that I knew everything there was to know about wax print. So I went out to Afropunk because I was going anyway, and I thought, let me capture some shots of wax print being used in, creative, wonderful, beautiful ways. And then maybe I'll ask some questions of a few people as well and get some sound bites. But what I found when I went out there was that there was actually more questions than there were answers. And so I kind of had a little bit of a dilemma. I thought to myself, well, either I can still just put out this video, which I now no longer believe to be true, because it doesn't appear that wax print is as African as I thought, or I can follow the thread to its logical conclusion. And so that's what I did. And it ended up turning into, from what was going to be like a 5-minute short film, into this epic extravaganza that is wax print film.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of a journey, a journey through 200 years of history and through 4 continents. Maybe we can have a look at the first segment to see more about your inspiration and your motivation.
Absolutely. My name's Aiwan. As a child, I took wax print for granted. In African homes like the one I grew up in, it was just cloth. I was wrapped in and tied to my mother's back with the fabric. And for years, I designed and created clothing from wax print. But with each piece I created, a burning question formed in my mind. Is wax print African? So I set out to find answers to this question. There's a particular fabric that I really miss, and it's like you see this, where it's embossed. It's like embossed here. Can you see those strokes? And it was pure black, and it had those strokes in it. And I miss that fabric, and I don't know if it will ever come back. This kind of reminds me of it a little bit, where you can see a pattern in the black, but it's all black. But it's not it, because that one was embossed, it wasn't a pattern. And I really, really, really miss that fabric. And if I see it, I will buy everything on site because I like it so much. Sometimes you fall in love with a print, you know? Many years ago, my grandma gave me this piece of wax print as a gift. To me, it was beautiful and bold with a touch of the psychedelic.
Well, such a beautiful fabric your grandmother gave to you. Do you actually wear it, or is it just a keepsake?
I guess it's more of a keepsake. So I have the bales, which I haven't cut into anything, and they're just at home. Sometimes I pull them out almost nostalgically. Sometimes I drape them on the back of the sofa. I haven't got the heart to cut them up.
No, I can imagine, but they're also for multi-purpose use, aren't they?
Yes, exactly. Sometimes I wrap them around my body. Yeah,
I'd love that. So, is it safe to say that your wax print journey started with this print, with this fabric? It started instigated by your grandmother?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, I grew up with wax print because it was the cloth that was used to, like I say at the intro of the film, I was wrapped in it. I was tied to my mum's back. I was laid on top of it when my mum would go to church for her night vigil. So they would have these services that would go on all night in the Pentecostal church. And us children would be laid at the back of the hall on pieces of wax print on the floor. So, I mean, I've just been raised around it and immersed in wax print culture, for want of a better term. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And where did you grow up?
I grew up in the UK, in London. Yeah.
And your cultural heritage is from which country?
Nigeria, West Africa.
Ah, okay, yeah. Lovely. Mm-hmm. So, and that's also the reason that you decided to dedicate this movie to your grandmother.
Absolutely. To my grandma, to my mom, to the Nana Benzes, all the strong, powerful women who have basically been the backbone of Africa, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's dedicated to them. Yeah.
You were talking about the Mama Benzes. For those who don't know who they are, can you explain? Mm-hmm. Mama Benz?
Yes, Mama Benz, Nana Benz. So the Nana Benz are these powerful women who made a lot of money trading in wax print fabrics. They were so wealthy that they were the first people in their villages to own luxury cars like the Mercedes-Benz, hence the term Nana Benz. And they wielded a lot of political influence as well. There's a funny story that Nina Sylvanus tells in the film, actually, where she talks about when the politicians didn't have enough cars for visiting dignitaries, they would go to the Nana Benz to borrow some of their cars to add to the fleet of vehicles.
Okay.
So yeah, these women were very powerful women.
Yeah, a kind of role model, right? And the term is still used Absolutely. For any business woman in certain African countries, isn't it? Countries.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. It's just that now the Nana Benzes, particularly in Togo, are more likely to make their wealth from selling rice rather than wax prints.
Oh, okay. So, well, maybe I'll use the term Mama Benz for myself in future when I make lots of money.
Yeah, once you're like, 100% Nana Benz, and I will salute you.
Okay. Well, we have been talking about wax prints and Dutch wax all the time, but in fact, we're talking about the Fisco brand, right? Mm-hmm. And Fisco is a Dutch company, as I think many people know. But I think maybe me, myself, I know Fisco, I guess, not all of my life, but for many decades. But only, I think, 15 years ago, I learned that it was actually a Dutch company. And I was rather disappointed about that because I felt a little bit tricked because they were displaying this blackness and Africanness, and while the headquarters was in Helmond of all places. And what do you think about, do people nowadays realize it's a Dutch fabric outside of African countries, obviously?
I think more and more people are learning the true history of wax prints, but I still think that people just automatically call it African fabric.
Yeah.
And that kind of bothers me because
me too.
Number one, yeah, exactly, right? Because number one, Africa isn't a country. And there are parts of Africa that don't use wax print, believe it or not. And then number two, it's not true. You know, it's a hybrid cloth. And I think when you call it African fabric, you're kind of disregarding its Indonesian roots. And then you're disregarding the Western technology and innovation that made it what it is, as well as all of the other maybe slightly negative things that come along with the creation of wax print by, you know, the British and the Dutch. So I think that term African fabric really bothers me. And also in that, there's an erasure of actual African fabrics as well, which I'm sure we're going to talk about a bit later on as well. So those are my issues, I think, with it.
Yeah. Well, that's the same issues that I have. People, when you talk about, let's say, black fashion or African fashion, people always tend to think it's fiscal, and that's it. There's so much more to it. And I think that's also one of the great points of the exhibition, that it shows the diversity of fashion, black fashion, African fashion, when you want to talk about that. While you were making this, maybe it's good to explain a little bit what Flisco actually is. It's not about weaving, it's about a batik, right?
So Flisco is it's one of the biggest manufacturers of wax print fabrics, and they have a massive factory in Helmond, and they churn out millions of yards of the fabric every year. They have different types of fabric. So there's the traditional sort of wax print technique, which is where they put the wax on and then they dye it and then they remove the wax and so on. And it goes through, I think it's about 70 processes to make a piece of wax print. And then they've got the screen printed one, which is a bit cheaper to make.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Is it safe to say that when you have a so-called African print fabric and you don't see any spaces without color, then it's not Flisco, it's not wax print? Is that a good way to diminish?
I can't speak to that, actually. I'm not entirely sure, because there are certain designs that are, for example, indigo and white, in which case in the white parts there is no dye. So
okay, let's skip that then, and let's talk about something else. You talked with a lot of wonderful people while making this documentary. One of them is a researcher called Kwame Edwin Otto. Correct me if my pronunciation is lousy. I guess it is. Kwame Edwin Otto. And who talks about Western capitalism and the influence on local products like Kente, for instance. And let's hear what he has to say about this.
The cultural dimension of making kente cloth, for example, is important, right? It's actually a knowledge that is passed on from one generation to the other. And this is something that you can say that the people who weave kente have preserved, right? And have actually sort of sought to protect from outsiders. So I would say that the Chinese perhaps can't even weave kente. White people can't weave the kente. Dutch wax print, I would argue, knew that, right, that we need to think about the emergence of Dutch wax print as coinciding with the need to suppress something like the kente industry, because they couldn't make the kente, right? And because they knew that as white people, that they owned this global capitalist system, that they could still ferret and, circulate that waxprint in ways that the already marginalized kente weaver cannot do, right? So we need to understand the kind of power hierarchies that subsist and the ways in which these power hierarchies somehow constrict opportunities for the African entrepreneurial class, of which a kente weaver who is somewhere in Bonre in Kumasi is a part of. And of course, even that idea that the kente weaver and the process of making kente is too traditional, is too backward, right? But then the Dutch waxprint with its industrial imprint is more civilized, right? So we need to think about the fact that these products also operate within particular civilizational paradigms, whereby the Ashanti weaver is seen as less culturally artistic than the much more, the expert, right, who is able to test the fabric. And I'm like, the Ashanti weaver is really brilliant.
Yeah. Abuse. Could you rephrase his words? And I would also like to know if you can relate to what he says.
Absolutely. So in that clip, Kwame is talking about the arrival of Dutch and English wax into an already established textile ecosystem within Ghana. And so what he's saying is that the arrival of this machine-made fabric essentially suppressed and crushed the local handmade textile industries. In Ghana, that would have been the kente industry. Because what you've got to understand is that with kente, as with the original batik that the Indonesians made, that is the foundation of waxprint, these textiles are handmade. They take a lot of time. They take a lot of patience, and they're also very hard wearing. So people would buy a piece and they would pass that piece on to future generations. So mother to daughter, daughter to granddaughter, and so on and so forth. And also there's the passing down from generation to generation of the actual technique of making the cloth as well. So, for example, making kente would be passed down within the technique of making kente would be passed down within family lines. So a particular family line would make kente. Now, when the Dutch and English wax prints came into the country, it's cheap to make. They can churn out loads of them very, very quickly. And they could churn out lots of designs, very quickly as well. And so what he's saying there is that that was an incursion into that space, and it suppressed the local industries because, people were rushing to buy this Dutch import, this English import, because as well, just the idea of it being imported from another place had like an extra specialness as well. And so what he's saying is that in that process, there's a loss of generational passing down of knowledge, passing down of design, passing down of heirlooms, a loss of appreciation for what we have, in order to almost be obsessed with what the West has to offer. And then in so doing, we discard what we have to offer. So essentially that's what he's saying in that clip. And yes, I do relate. And yes, I fully agree with what he's saying.
Yeah. Well, that's something we have to, maybe later on we can dive into more profoundly, so to say. And he was referring to kente in a specific, and for those who think they don't know what kente is the woven materials you see often being used in fashion also nowadays. For instance, I think it was the May issue of the American Vogue of this year, featuring Amanda Gorman wearing a kente cloth by Louis Vuitton, I think. And that caused a lot of both appreciation, but also uproar. Because when you talk about traditional fabrics, so-called traditional fabrics, so-called African fabrics like Flisco, wax prints, or kente is not, or kente, we also talk about the topic of cultural appropriation. And that's a really big topic and really important and really difficult to address. And this was also one of the reasons why I wanted to show your movie, because it touches to this topic, and it's also why we had in the book that comes with the exhibition, the first of fashion book, so to say, not a catalog, but truly a book. There's a big essay on cultural appropriation and on wax prints by Munganyende Helene Christel. And she's a millennial, and it's really interesting to see the generational differences when we come to the appreciation of fiscal, of wax prints, so to say. And I was wondering, is that a thing that's worldwide an issue or not? That you see that young people, they tend to develop a disliking towards wax prints, while people of, let's say, my age truly love it? Or can we state that?
Yeah, I think so, because I even think about when I was actually filming wax print and I went out to Nigeria to interview my grandma. I spoke with my cousin, Gift, who at the time was 16 years old. And I asked her and I said, what are your thoughts about wax print? And she was like, I don't even know why anybody would be interested in that cloth. That's the kind of thing, that is the kind of fabric that women wear who've had 10 children. It's not something that, her generation wears, that she's more interested in jeans and t-shirts and blouses and that sort of thing. So that's from a continent perspective. So that was in Nigeria. When I think about the diaspora, I find that we're very interested in the history of things, the authenticity of things. And so I think discovering that something isn't truly African makes it hard for someone to champion it in this age of knowing who you are, knowing your roots, being authentic, local, this sort of drive towards local produced things, so I don't know. Yeah, I would agree. And I think that there is definitely a decrease in market share when it comes to the millennials and younger for wax print.
I think that's what we see worldwide, right? That's why
absolutely
Frisco is in problems, has problems nowadays. I just spoke about the Voice of Fashion book, in which there's a big reading on this topic. And one of the people that is being quoted in this article is Sabine Bolk. She's a Dutch, the lady who's in your movie also, a Dutch batik activist, she calls herself, and a batik blogger, and a really someone who's really in the know. And she talks about, who is or is not allowed, should be allowed to wear wax prints. And a very interesting topic, but also a problematic topic. And this is what she says about it.
Yeah, so for me, I never wear wax print for that reason, because I feel like I'm not the right person to wear it.
Who is the right person to wear it?
I think for me, the people actually that have been displaced from Africa are the right people to wear it. It sounds maybe really weird to say on camera, I don't know. But for me, because it tells the whole story, like where you come from, like in a way, wax print didn't exist if the Dutch or the English weren't busy with getting their colonies all over the place and whatever comes with it. So in a way, that textile tells that story. And I think it can be a really powerful message in that way.
So that was Sabine, and she said, I'm not the right person to wear the wax print. And also she said, you cannot separate wax print from colonialism. What do we make of this?
I mean, she's right. You can't separate it from colonialism. The very invention of wax print is founded in colonialism. It's founded on Western people being in countries that they had no business being in and taking things from those parts of the world, and then, using technological innovation during the Industrial Revolution to manufacture them. and then finding new markets for that cloth in their other colonies on the other side of the world. So you can't separate waxprint from its colonial roots. It is a colonial fabric. She's definitely right about that.
Yeah. And she also said, as I said before, I'm not the right person to wear the waxprint. And I think it's really a difficult, it's a valid question, who can and who cannot wear. But it's also something that distracts from the main issue, in my point of view, when talking about colonialism, when talking about cultural appropriation, because it's not about the individual person who decides what or what not to wear, but it's about taking into account that there are really big differences in power, in knowledge, in equality, so to say, and that this is a symptom of a system that is, as you said before, comes from colonialism, and it's a system of use and abuse and claim and rename. And I think that's the really the horrific side of cultural appropriation, not the fact that the guy or the woman in the street is wearing something that's not from their own culture. But on the same time, I think you had several white people rocking wax prints in the movie. It felt a little bit awkward to me. It's not to me to decide what one has to wear. It's up to them, obviously. But still, I have mixed feelings about that. Let's stay diplomatic.
Okay, but then, so let me ask you this, right? If waxprint is a hybrid cloth, right? A mixture of three cultures, Indonesian, Dutch, English, European, and then, West African, Central Africa. Why wouldn't a Dutch or English person be able to wear something that actually does come from their culture? Because we've established that Vlisco is in the Netherlands. It's a Dutch company, and Sabina is a Dutch person. Why shouldn't she wear what comes from her culture?
Yeah, that's what she said for herself. I'm not the person to wear it, she says. Because
exactly.
Yeah, so I think it's up on everyone for itself to decide. And also, it's not as black as white as it may sound by what I said before, because it depends also on context and the person who is wearing it. I know several people who know what they wear and why they wear it, and it's also a difference. The way how you wear it, but it's. Do I make any sense or not?
I think I understand. So, like, if I think about the couple of people in the film who were wearing waxprint, who were white, what was it specifically about them wearing it that rubbed you the wrong way?
Yeah. I think I may mind it less when the snit, the design of the outfit is not typically African, so to say. Do you understand what I mean?
I
don't like people wearing the African style attire, is the word, with head wraps and typically African style dresses. I don't like that at all. But I don't mind, I think, when you have a waxprint trousers or a shirt or something like that. I think that's a thin line. It's a thin line, but it's difficult, I think.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So in the wearing of the African style, you feel like that is a form of cultural appropriation, would you say?
Yeah, I truly think that's the case. Yeah. But again, it's we can talk about this for hours and then still the outcome will be the same. It's also a matter of how you feel about it.
Right. So then if if we, so for example, I wear jeans and I'm wearing like this polo shirt, would you say that that's a form of cultural appropriation? Because I think one of the big discussions is what actually is cultural appropriation. Because for me, I think of cultural appropriation more from an economic standpoint, rather than just someone wearing a design and appreciating a design. There's cultural appreciation and cultural appropriation. So I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on that.
I totally agree with that. But there are also people who say, well, cultural appreciation doesn't exist. It still is cultural appropriation. And Black people wearing jeans or all kinds of stuff, that's a way of, how do you put that, surviving. People had to adjust their outfits to be able to live and to thrive and to work and to do the things they do in this society. So I think that's a different discussion. But it's really an interesting one and really difficult. And I would love to talk about it with you on another moment in time.
Absolutely.
So because we were talking about cultural appropriation, right? And some people, there is a link between cultural appropriation and colonialism. And some people call, excuse me, some people say, well, cultural appropriation is a new form of colonialism. So this time the West does not occupy the West, Western countries, Europe, America, North America, do not occupy land, but they steal music, songs, fabrics, styles, ideas, and cultures from marginalized people. Mm-hmm. And there are some who claim that African countries, African people, let it just happen. And one of those people is Cecile Essono, who is also in the movie.
Mm-hmm. We need to educate ourselves. We need to take ownership of what is ours, you know, and make a living out of it and not let other people always take advantage of us like that. You know, we can't always blame other people. They are doing this to us, but what are we doing to stop it? So I love you, my people, but, you know, we need to wake up.
We can get back to it later.
Yeah.
We can back. So we have to take ownership, Cecile says. Is that well, how do you say that? Easier said than done?
Well, it depends what you're taking ownership of. I mean, I don't feel like taking ownership of waxprint really serves us unless we are literally owning the means of production of waxprint, you know, owning the factories that produce waxprint, you know, then of course that's a form of taking ownership. But unless we're doing that, then there's really no point because it's not something that we actually own. So you can't, you know, we can't go and take over the Vlisco factory and say, right, this is now a Black owned factory, right? Although maybe a Black person could buy the Vlisco factory and that would be dope, right?
Actually, Vlisco is for sale. And I read the other day, I think yesterday only, I forgot to share that there were two possible buyers. One was a group of Black and African buyers, and the other was a group of the Dutch people who own the HEMA chain, the HEMA chain of stores. And although I shall say Team Africa had the first, they had given they said, well, we want it and this is the money. That's what I read. The Vlisco firm is going to sell it to the HEMA company people because they were not sure if the Team Africa could come up with the money. And I have understood that this is a big riot in Nigeria because also one of the supposed Black buyers is the son of, what's his name, Kofi Annan. So to be continued, I guess. And also people in Nigeria were saying, this is also new colonialism. Why can't we buy back what's ours? And that was the question.
Yes.
So we were just talking about cultural appropriation, and I think you wanted to add something about that, right?
No, I just wanted to, I guess for me, like with cultural appropriation, the emphasis for me is definitely on economics first and foremost. And so for me, when I think about the solutions to cultural appropriation, it's really about us appreciating and valuing what we already have. As Africans, we have a whole range of textile traditions going back millennia. And I feel as though as Africans in the diaspora and on the continent, we need to embrace what we already have. We need to own it. We need to say to the world, this is this beautiful thing that we have, that we own, and we value it. And so you value it. And so you come and purchase what we have, so that what we're doing is securing generational wealth for generations to come for young African children. I think that's, for me, the answer to cultural appropriation, rather than just always sort of shouting at people when they do certain things with waxprint that we don't own and never actually did own. It was just an illusion of ownership.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. And maybe a way of claiming it, of owning it outside of the economics is actually show it and wear it. And like
exactly.
Some years ago, you had the whole discussion about Kim Kardashian, who appropriated box braids. Yeah. Do you remember? Or cornrows?
Yeah.
Both. She appropriates everything. So I don't know which one it was.
She does.
And at that time, some people said, well, why didn't black women wear their hair more in traditional styles? And when that would have been happened, this wouldn't have been the case. But I'm not sure if that is true. But
no, I don't. No, the thing is, to me, that's a form of gaslighting, because we live in a society where if a black woman wears her hair in natural styles, she's deemed as unprofessional. And so there's all of these social stigmas that prevent black women from doing it, because if they do it, then they're blocked from economic wealth in terms of rising up the ranks within their company. So that's a form of gaslighting, and I completely reject that.
Yeah, then we are on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, like you say, that's what I mean when I say we should value what we have, and we value it by wearing it, by being proud of it, by importing and exporting, you know what I mean? And talking about it and being proud of it. But most importantly, owning the means of production.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. You have traveled, I think, half of the globe with your movie, or do I exaggerate as always?
I like your exaggeration. It makes me feel good.
Okay. But you have been showing your movie in several countries, right?
Yes, it's shown all over the world, Japan, all across the United States, Europe, New Zealand, all over Africa.
Did people react in the same way in various countries, or were the biggest differences between, let's say, America and the Netherlands, for instance?
Oh, it's a massive difference, because what I found is in America, particularly when the audience was African American, there was almost a sense of loss, in the sense that waxprint was a symbol for African Americans of connection to their roots. Obviously, we know that with African Americans, there's the history of the transatlantic slave trade, a displacement and a disconnection from Africa. And particularly during the civil rights movement, you know, if you think about the dashiki, you know, it was like, this was a symbol, you know, Black power, our roots, this is African, we're African, and this is how this is one of the ways that we're connecting to Africa. And so I think with the film, it was almost like a sense of loss, like, oh, this isn't actually truly African. And so that was the feeling that I got as I was doing the Q&As across America to predominantly African-American audiences. Yeah. When it came to Europe, the conversation became heavily about things like cultural appropriation and that sort of discussion. Yes. Absolutely.
But maybe also because the people in the States did not know about the Dutch origin of the fabric.
Exactly. They didn't know about that connection to Holland and England. I mean, I'm sure some people did, but the feeling I got from a lot of the people I spoke with was that it wasn't very clear that that was the roots of the fabric.
Yeah. Yeah. As I said before, I know Visco for waxprint for most part of my life. And in the beginning of my fashion activism, I'm advocating diversity in fashion and culture later on. And I really embraced Visco because, hey, they were celebrating blackness and black culture and black traditions. But really soon, as soon as I really started to inspect their campaigns, I wasn't happy at all because I thought, well, you may celebrate black beauty at first glance, but when you have a closer look, you hardly see any, let's say, women who are wearing their natural hair. All their models seem to wear extensions or styled hair. What's it called again? Straightened hair. And neither did I see any, let's say, fuller figured women in the campaigns. And I lost sight of Visco later on. So I don't know what the status is nowadays, but how do their campaigns look recently? Do you check?
I think the last campaign I saw, there were women with that traditional, we call it like thread, you know, where your hair is threaded.
We call it threading also.
Yeah. So I the last campaign I saw some of that with like puffs, like I don't know what you call it, like Afro puffs almost. Yeah. I didn't see many full-figured women, which is strange because it's very strange.
But on the other hand, this is what fashion is about. Still about. It's about, let's say, standard or thin bodies. It's not about big bodies, let alone big black bodies. Let's be honest about that.
Well, yeah. I mean, even when I think about the terminology, I wouldn't even call it standard. The standard body isn't thin at all.
You're right.
So even then, you know, it's not in line with humanity, to be perfectly frank. But that is unfortunately that is the standard in fashion. But hopefully things are changing.
I hope also. Maybe we could call it average size, medium size. Maybe we should drop the labels.
I was going to say, let's just drop the labels and let's just be.
So you ended your movie by thanking the ancestors for what they, for their resilience and their strength to survive, so to say. Why did you end it like that?
Because as I traveled around the world filming waxprint, and particularly when I got to Ghana and I visited Elmina Castle, which is the castle where Africans were enslaved. And that was the last point before they left the continent to go on to the brutality that awaited them in the Caribbean and in the Americas. So standing in that space, that terrifying, horrible space, I was kind of overwhelmed by the thought that, number one, we're kind of taught to ignore all of who we were as people in favor of Christianity, you know, Jesus, God, or whatever, and that's it. And there's a saying that you can't know where you're going unless you know where you've come from. And a lot of who we were and where we come from has been erased, has been tainted, has been changed, whether you are in the diaspora, whether you're on the continent, it doesn't matter. For Black people, so much of who we were has been erased. And I think standing there in that moment, I just felt this overwhelming feeling that we have to honor these people who went through what they went through. They were strong, they were powerful. As a result of them, we're still here. As a result of them, our culture has actually spread around the globe, whether it's our dance, whether it's our singing, whether it's our style, whether it's our slang, our hairstyles that the Kardashians are culturally appropriating. You know, this comes from somewhere. It comes from who we were. And I think it's really important as Black people to finally start acknowledging who we were, where we come from, so that we can map out where we're going as a people. Otherwise, we're just going to be floundering. And so I think for me, everything that I do is founded on, and I stand on the shoulders of my ancestors, and they lift me up and they give me strength.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. So is that the main lesson you have learned by making this movie, or is there something else?
I think the central question was, is waxprint African? At the end of the film, I said that it was African. Now, 3 years later, I don't agree with that. It isn't African. It's a hybrid cloth. It's a mixture of Indonesian, European, and African cultures. And that's what that is. Now, instead, I'm focused on African textiles from Africa. What are those traditions that we can hold on to? What are those traditions that we can value? And what are those traditions that we can say to the world, hey, you purchase this and let's get that money and put it back into the creation of generational wealth for African children around the world. That's my main focus.
Yeah. So your next fashion collection, if there's going to be one, is going to be with what kind of material? Not wax prints, so.
No, it wouldn't be wax print. I like the idea of making a collection with batik. I like the idea of making a collection with adire, which is a Nigerian textile. So I think those are the two that I'd want to play around with initially if I were to do another collection.
Now, interesting. And what are your do you have other projects you're working on at this moment, or room thinking about?
So at the moment, I'm actually working on releasing waxprint to the world. And we're currently in talks with a couple of distributors, and we're just trying to get the final deals signed so that it can be out next year, because that's when I want the film to be out for public consumption.
Okay.
I also want to put out the soundtrack as well, and I'm talking to someone about that as well. So those are the two things that I'm really working on for the next year, and trying to get that going.
I'm sure you'll manage.
Yes.
So to get back to the end of the movie, when you thank the ancestors and gave them your message. So what would be your message to future generations, so to say?
My message to future generations, that's a really good question. I would say, trust yourself. Everything you need to survive is inside you. Trust yourself. Don't let anybody wipe away who you were, because who you were is just as important as who you're going to be. So trust yourself.
This makes me almost emotional, because that's also what I wanted to say. I would have said, you're fabulous. You can do anything you want to do, and just stay true to yourself, be yourself, and everything will be all right.
Yes.
Maybe a little bit too romantic, but I truly believe in that.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with a bit of romance.
A little bit of romanticism won't hurt anyone.
Not at all.
So, I would like to thank you for this wonderful conversation. I don't know if there are any questions via the chat. If so, maybe people can always find us via socials. They can find you on Instagram, right? What's your account on Instagram?
Yeah, so there's at waxprint film. And then there's my account, which is at Aiwan Obinyan.
And you're also on Twitter, aren't you?
Yeah, so that's at waxprint film again and at Aiwan Obinyan on Twitter as well.
Okay, well, I'm also on Instagram and on Twitter and on Facebook. And on LinkedIn. I'm everywhere.
You're everywhere.
People should also follow the Centraal Museum socials to be in the know about future developments and so on. As I said before, the screening of the movie of the entire movie will be August 7, Saturday in the museum and also online, I think. And our fabulous exhibition is still on show till visual artist Irish. And the book can be, this is the commercial hour. The book can be obtained via the museum, via the local Dutch bookstore, or via the publisher. And that's it for now, I think. I really would like to thank everyone, all hundreds of people who have been attending. Thank you for being here. I really would like to thank Michiel and Jimmy for the technical and productional support. And above all, I want to thank you for being here, obviously, but also mainly for making this very insightful and important movie. I'm looking forward to all your future projects, and I hope that you will keep on being as creative as you are, and above all, stay safe and healthy, and maybe we can talk soon later on.
Absolutely. No, thank you. And I just want to say thank you for doing the exhibition as well. And thank you for championing Black voices in fashion, because I think that's something that we need more of as well. So I'm 100% grateful. Thank you.
Thank you too. Bye, everyone.
Bye.